This screencast is intended to give you some background in Anglo-Saxon culture. Knowing this information should help you better understand our reading for today. Remember that the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes came to England at the behest of Celtic king Vortigern, who wanted them to help protect his people from the invading Pictish tribes. And you can see from this map, this is the area that the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes came from. This is northern Germany, Denmark, that sort of area. And the little island here is in modern day Denmark. And this island is where they think that Heorot, the historical mead hall of Hrothgar in our story, takes place. So Beowulf takes place in the area where the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, it was their homeland. So this is a story of their heritage. So these Anglo-Saxon tribes are what we would commonly refer to as Vikings, and they brought with them to England many traditions from their Germanic homeland. The tribes banded together into small groups led by a leader called a Hlaford. And Hlaford means literally the keeper of the loaf or the keeper of the bread. So this is the person who provided for the people. And this title was later shortened to just Lord. And so we have the Lord at the head of the community. The Lord surrounded himself with a group of strong fighting men called his Thanes. And these men were very powerful in the tribe. And when I say men, it could be men or women. There were women warriors. So it could be either one, but they were all known for their fighting prowess. The Lord and his Thanes engaged in what is called a comitatus relationship. The Lord provided the Thanes and their families with all the necessities of life, and he also generously shared any treasure that they gained through fighting other groups. So he would be kind of called the giver of the rings. You know, we have Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and that's kind of the Lord of the community. He gives the treasure to the people. And in return, they promised that they would have complete allegiance to their Lord. And they swore that they would never leave him on the field of battle, no matter what. So no matter how frightened they were, no matter how outnumbered they were, they would stay with him no matter what. And if he were killed in battle, they promised to avenge his death. The Anglo-Saxons believed in a man's word. In fact, there is a deep belief in the relationship between word and deed that you're going to see often in Beowulf. In fact, these lines were said by the Danish Coast Guard. He said, anyone with gumption and a sharp mind will take the measure of two things, what's said and what's done. So if you said something, you had to follow it up with the deed. Words were incredibly powerful. So as I said, these words were so powerful, they were not to be trifled with. So if a Thane swears to do something, he must do everything in his power to follow through on that pledge. As far as I know, there were not any dog Thanes, but I love this dog's armor. So in Beowulf, there are specific pledges that we find Beowulf making, and he makes several times, so you should watch for them as you read along. And he says, I will do this thing or I will die trying. And this is not, like a thing that people will say, I'm going to do this if it kills me. We don't mean that seriously, but Beowulf does. And these particular pledges that he makes are called boasts. Boasts. And so boasting then is not like what we think of as boasting now, where you're just completely full of yourself. A formal boast in Beowulf is a promise to do something or to die trying. The comitatus relationship was at the heart of each of the Anglo-Saxon groups. If a thane deserted his lord and didn't live up to his promise, then he and his family were banished from the community, sent into exile. Exile was considered the absolute worst form of punishment that a person could receive because they would not be welcomed into another community. They and their families would forever be outcasts and would no longer be able to partake in the joys of the mead hall. And so when I say mead hall, I don't mean a bar like Pub 2. The Anglo-Saxons lived in their mead halls. They ate there, they slept there, shared stories there, all within the comitatus community. Why did they call it a mead hall then? Because they drank there. The Anglo-Saxons drank a beer made from honey called mead, mead, and they drank a lot of it since water could make you sick in those days, so you didn't want to take any chances. But think about how dangerous that was. Here we have trained warriors armed to the gill with swords and battle axes and drinking heavily into the night. Of course, fights broke out, and they could easily turn ugly. Members of the community were often hurt. Teeth knocked out, noses sliced off, ears and fingers ending up on the floor. Sometimes one thane even killed another, or more often than not, a thane killed one of the lesser members of the community. With all of this mayhem, how could the Anglo-Saxons keep the comitatus communities from falling apart? They came up with a pretty ingenious system. It was called weregild. And I'm sure that you've seen this were before, like in werewolf. Were is the Old English word for man. So weregild means man price. And these people who we see as being so incredibly uncivilized had a system of fines that would be paid to the injured person or to his family if he was killed. Weregild kept blood feuds from breaking out. If you hurt someone, you paid the weregild, and all should be forgiven. If you didn't pay, though, the injured party or his family could come after you and your family with weapons drawn. Watch for references to weregild in Beowulf. The final thing that you should know for now is the relationship between an uncle and his sister's son. This was the strongest bond in all of Anglo-Saxon society. It wasn't just the Anglo-Saxons, really. In the Pictish royal family, remember those Picts who lived up north of the Hadrian's Wall? In the Pictish royal family, the throne was entailed from the king to his sister's son. So why do you think they did that? Some people thought, and some people still do think, that it is to show the power of women in that society. But the truth really is the opposite. It's a distrust of women. What does a man know about his sister's son that he might not necessarily know about his own? And the answer to that is that he knows that they share the same blood. His son might have been fathered by another man, but even if his sister were unfaithful, he knows that that boy shares his bloodline. This closeness this closeness was not all about inheritance, though. Uncles and nephews appear throughout Beowulf. Watch for them and watch that relationship. And finally, what's next? When you have finished this screencast, watch the Beowulf introduction screencast before you read the text. I know this is a lot of preparation, but all of these things should really help you understand and enjoy the text more. So the next screencast will give you a lot of helpful pointers while reading the poem. Enjoy.